school district in Texas, one of the most diverse school districts in the country. Zeph Capo, the president of the Houston Federation of Teachers, who represents our teachers here in our community. They have a lot of concerns because they're going to have to be the front line in this army dealing with all of the issues that have come to us because of COVID-19. Communities in Schools CEO Lisa Descant, and if you're not familiar with Community in Schools, they really are an advocate for underserved children to try and make sure they don't fall through the cracks, that they get all the services they need to make sure they get a quality education and graduate from high school. We're excited to have parents with us today. We have Diane Morales, who is a PTA president at Housman Elementary School in Spring Branch ISD, where my 3 children go to school. At NSB ISD, not at Housman Elementary, and Jennifer Swallen, who is the mother of 2 children that attend HISD Elementary School. So welcome and thank you to all of you for joining us today. I want to get right to it. We have so many questions from our Channel 13 community, in excess of 200 questions coming in. So we know you are very concerned about your children. And I want to start with a question that I think is easiest for us to answer. It comes to us from Lisa Bergstrom, and Lisa is asking, Zeph, I'm going to give you this question, the first question. Here's the question. Are we going back to school in person?
Well, the governor and the commissioner seems to think so, but they've been really short on the details of how we're going to go back in person. We are certainly not going back in the same manner that we did in August. There's definitely has to be changes, and those changes have to be dictated by the needs of the stakeholders, the parents, the students, the teachers, the school district officials who have to make the direct decisions, and perhaps in this case, the life and death decisions for our students and our staff, based on the evidence-based practices, hopefully from health providers and not from any political bent one way or the other.
So today a lot of news was made because we found out from the governor not only that schools would be allowed to go back in session in person in the fall in August. But we also learned that he was not going to, from the state level, mandate masks that's in the school districts. The school districts will be able to make their own decision about whether or not they want to use masks. I want to start with you, Dr. Lathan, since you have the big old school district, Houston ISD. Can you tell us right now where you are in terms of making a decision about what HISD is going to do? I know today you announced that they're not going to be using that year-round calendar. You're going to be starting school on August 24th. But where are you in terms of a overall viewpoint of how you're going to handle instruction?
And you know what we're planning, thank you for the opportunity, Gina. We're planning for, of course, 3 scenarios, face-to-face, but still there will be some modifications, a hybrid scenario or 100% online. We have a reopening task force that's working. They will have a draft of recommendations this week. We'll take a look at that, but we still need to rely on the guidance of our city and county health officials, and we're going to do what's best for the children that we serve here in the city of Houston. The way I read the information today as it relates to the governor's decision is we still have to do what's best for our own school communities, and we will do that. I just read that there would not be an order in place saying that schools would continue to be closed. We will look at the utilization of masks. It is required right now for all of our personnel that report to work, but we're going to do what's best for the children that we serve here in the city of Houston and the staff members.
So does that mean right now where you're sitting, are you leaning toward mandating masks for your students?
Right now we are. I mean, because that's the decision where we are and I shouldn't say mandate. Yeah, I'll say mandate. Right now we're looking at, that is the recommendation that's coming from our city and county officials. And if our city and county officials are recommending masks, we're going to do the same thing and follow suit. So right now we're saying yes, if that order is still in place in Harris County in the city of Houston, that would be the order for the Houston Independent School District.
I'm going to ask you one more question from one of our viewers, then I'm going to let Jen ask her first question as an HISD mom. This question comes to us from Lorena. It says, if HISD schools return to in-person classes, will parents have the option to do virtual homeschooling, or do they have to withdraw their children to do so?
Parents will have that option once we receive the final guidance or the guidance from TEA as it relates to how attendance will be required or will need to be tracked. We will provide parents that opportunity with the guidelines so that they can provide or their child can participate in virtual instruction for the upcoming school year.
Okay, Ms. Swallen, as an HISD mother, I want to give you a chance to speak directly to the superintendent with the question that's most bothering you. Your mic is off. If you could turn it on for us.
Oh, sorry, first time.
No
Okay,
problem.
so I have two boys, and they don't do so well in a web-based environment. And we tried it. There would be 24 kids on the computer, and it's not personal. And my kids need that interaction. And I want to be sensitive to families that may have an illness where they can't have their children in a school environment, but I want to make sure that my kids do have access to learning in a classroom. That's very important to me, however that may look. And so will you guys consider having the school open as well as a web-based curriculum?
Yes, so we're planning for that. Our instructional continuity team that includes central office personnel, principals, and teachers. We have two plans in the works, a reopening plan with recommendations around health and life safety, and then there will also be a plan around instructional continuity. So that option will be available for students and parents as it relates to what online instruction will look like.
You had a second question, or do you want us to get back with you, Ms. Swallen?
Get back with me. That's fine.
Okay, so I want to go to you now, Dr. Dupre. Fort Bend County Fort Bend ISD, I should say, announced a plan earlier this week. I think it was earlier this week, or was it last? I was losing track of my days.
This week.
This week, thank you. I appreciate you bailing me out on that one. I actually have 3 questions that came into me via Twitter for you for Fort Bend ISD. So let me go ahead and put those to you. And the first question is regarding Fort Bend ISD plans. This is from Sandy. How is the online education platform being modified to improve the students' learning process? Are improvements being made throughout all grade levels? And I guess before you get to that, we should point out to people who don't know that you are offering a hybrid plan where the kids who are in elementary schools will go to school full-time in the classroom, and middle school and high school kids will alternate either days or weeks, I guess, in the classroom.
Yes, Gina. So again, thank you for having me this evening. But let me clarify, one of the most important things our parents in Fort Bend ISD need to know is that the conceptual framework we presented to our board Monday is just that. It's a framework. It's not a detailed plan. Our goal Monday was to make sure our families knew which children might need childcare and which children might not. For our community, that has been a major concern about if we're going to be flexible and how we're going to handle the children in our community. The moms and dads know they need to get back to work. They're being expected to return to work, and they need to understand when their children are going to be in school and when they're not. So we wanted to commit that our children in grades first, pre-K through 6th, will be in school every day, even though we can't quite define what the length of the day will be. We're hoping it'll be the full day, and we are expecting grades 7 through 12 to alternate days. And like Dr. Lathan said, we are going to have the full-time at-home learning option as well for the students in our community. But I want to come back to your question.
Yeah.
And the question I heard you ask is, how are we going to improve our efforts for online learning this fall over what parents and students experienced in the spring? And I'm going to tell you that's an easy question, because the spring was a drop everything and turn on online learning overnight. That was crisis education is what that was. It was challenging for everybody, from the teachers to the parents to the students, and we get that. But we had to get through that, right? The commissioner expected us to get through the spring, and we did it very successfully. And so I'm proud of our efforts. Our mantra at Fort Bend was actually, it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be good. But when you have a lot of people learning all new systems and new tools and resources all at the same time, you're going to have varying degrees of quality. So our goal for this fall is we have set much clearer expectations. And again, like Dr. Lathan said, that's what we're working on now, is setting those expectations. For example, we would have teachers probably in our classrooms teaching, not at home in their living room or in their dining room. Even if they don't have students in the classroom, we want to put them back in a professional environment where they have their full resources and all the tools they need, of course, in a very safe and protected way. We are going to protect all of our teachers very well. But we're also going to introduce some new tools, and set some new standards of expectations that all teachers would apply across the entire district. In Fort Bend, equity is our biggest concern because we have such a varied community, from very wealthy to very poor to all different kinds of learners. And so our big goal for this fall is to make sure the needs of our most at-risk students are taken care of. And by that, I mean our special education students, our students who are English language learners, even our GT students. Any student who is at risk in any way needs to be in school. And that is our goal, is to support all children to make sure we're meeting their needs. So we are going to have new expectations. It's going to be a very different experience this fall, even online.
This is another question. It's kind of similar, but just I want to give you a chance to address it. This is from Yolanda, also in Fort Bend. She says, Schoology was the worst kind of tool for instructing a child with ASD. How is Fort Bend addressing possibly having to do online instruction during the next school year and accommodation for SPED students in school if we go back?
So I'll be honest, Gina, we were using the Schoology as our learning management system that houses our curriculum. And it allows students and their parents to see what assignments are being given. It allows teachers to do the lesson planning and those kinds of things. We were using that system in a way it was not intended to be used. But that's the resource we had in place. So we paired that with Zoom to do our best to educate our students. And we know that was not ideal for many of our I was hearing from students directly who are challenged learners telling me, Dr. Dupre, please let me get back to school. This is not working for me. And it broke my heart to engage with those sweeties because it was so hard on them, and their parents were every bit of patience were tested. And so we're very committed to making sure our systems this fall will meet their needs in a much more direct way.
Diane Morales, I know you had concerns about your children getting a good education last spring, and you reached out to community and schools. Tell us a little bit about where you are right now and your concerns as a mom. And your mic, there we go. Perfect.
So my concerns are, how big will the classroom size be? How will the 6 feet apart be set into a classroom with, right now, class size are already at 25 to maybe 30 kids per teacher. So how will they ensure that the 6 feet is put in place during classroom, lunch, recess, gym, health fitness? That's my big concern.
Who do you want to start with to answer that question?
I'd like to address that.
Okay.
I'm going to be honest, Ms. Morales. If you were a Fort Bend ISD parent, I would tell you it is going to be virtually impossible to keep our students socially distanced at 6 feet. Children do not do that. They are active, they're engaged, they move. Even at our graduations, 18-year-old young people were told to remain 6 feet apart, but they were high-fiving and hugging because they missed each other, and that's what young people do. So you can imagine trying to keep a classroom of 6 or 7-year-olds apart. So our goal is going to have to be beyond the social distancing. And so, I'm going to go back again. You asked Dr. Lathan a question about kind of the governor's orders and what's coming out of TEA. Each community is going to have to do what's expected in that community. Texas schools are governed by local school boards. And that's why we are all surveying the parents and the taxpayers and the voters in our local communities. Because what you do in Spring Branch or Houston may be different than what we do in Fort Bend, but all of our goal collectively is to protect our children and protect the teachers. And that may mean masks, it may mean the face shields, it may mean lots of cleaning and gloves. We don't know what that's going to look like yet, but the question you have just asked is perhaps one of the most challenging issues we will be facing when schools reopen. Because short of putting them in little boxes and little walls, there is virtually no way to truly social distance children.
Dr. Lathan, you want to answer? You want to address her question as well?
And I definitely agree, but I'll take it one step further. It's hard to get adults to socially distance. There are days I'm sitting in my office and I look out the window and I'll see employees all close and I'm calling on a cell phone saying, okay, you're not 6 feet apart. So it's going to take some time. And then they're looking around to see where I am, but it's going to take some time. Today I held a meeting with all of our district principals and we talked about the square footage, the number of students in the classroom. We're going to do the best that we can, but we also are going to make sure that we do as much as possible to make sure that everyone is safe. But it is going to be very difficult and very challenging. Number one, our students haven't seen each other in it'll be almost 6 months by that time. So that's going to be emotional in itself, but we are going to do the best that we can. I will go back to my parent that I agree, all of us, and Dr. Dupre will tell you, we have sleepless nights because we want all of our students back, especially our most vulnerable students. Thank you to our partners in communities and schools. We need our students back. But I also, as I tell staff, I'm not going to compromise someone's safety to rush and bring everyone back. And so we're going to take our time. We've surveyed our staff, we've surveyed our parents, but we still have to take it one step further. And there might be times that we'll have to reclose our schools, but we will give priority as it relates to face-to-face to the most neediest of students. And we've identified them through, of course, achievement data and also through their social and emotional supports that are needed.
I'm going to get to you, Ms. Descant, next, but I want to just ask you real quickly, Ms. Lathan. When we talk about the neediest students, I know today HISD announced it's going to do some boot camps. So the boot camps will be for the kids you just described that have already been identified, or are you going to be able to keep identifying? Because obviously there's some kids who just fell behind in the last spring, and so they might be newly on the radar. Do you feel confident you'll be able to identify all the kids who need to be in those boot camps before school starts?
Most definitely. We have about 63,000 students right now in summer school, in our virtual summer school. And so not only will we continue to provide instruction through our academic boot camps for those students, but also our principals will identify additional students that will return for those academic boot camp days.
How challenging, though, when you have kids get Fs in the spring to have them make up that class in the fall? Because usually the way the curriculum runs, you have the A curriculum in the fall and the B curriculum in the spring. So is that really hard to get them to make up second semester, first semester?
Well, I want to remind people, pre-COVID, we were already doing that. Especially if you think about high school students, they do credit recovery. And so that you might have a high school senior making up a course from their freshman year. We have outstanding teachers, not only in HISD, but across this entire county and across our state that know how to catch students up. They know how to help those students that are failing, but also those students that need additional support. And so we'll do what we need to do to ensure our students are ready to graduate, of course, next in 2021 for the next class.
Okay.
Gina, I'd like to weigh in on that if you don't mind,
yes,
because I think
sure.
because Dr. Lathan is what she said is spot on. We are already working every day to help students who are behind catch up, but we have to recognize everyone that this virus, this pandemic, this is not a 1 year clean up, fix it up, and move on. We have children, they lost 9 weeks of classroom instruction, and everybody did their best to help them keep learning. But we know in Fort Bend, none of our students got the full measure that they should have and could have gotten had they been in their classrooms. So we're building entire schedules and structures to make sure that all of our students, because we have high performing students as well as low performing students that will be struggling for the next 2 or 3 years. And our goal is to not let them get any further behind. Mm-hmm. Because if the further behind they get, the more likely it is they're going to drop out and face challenges. Their whole life can be affected by what happened during this pandemic. And our job is to close that gap and help them get caught up and not lose that time permanently. But it will look very different for all of our students. So even though we're addressing tonight some of the specific, the PPE and the safety and how we're going to do school, the reality is we're going to have unique schedules using weekends, after schools, and even during the school day to help catch up our children so that they can make up the gaps that were created this spring.
If I could go to you now, Ms. Descant, with Community in Schools, I have some data that HISD had placed about 9,000 computer devices into schools and given them to students, I should say, at home. And Fort Bend had given out almost 7,000 laptop computers to its students. both districts, all districts in our area, are giving out Wi-Fi hotspots as well. When I talked to you the other day, you said to me there is a massive need. It goes beyond technology, however. If you can tell us a little bit about your work with the children who are underserved in our community to try and to keep them on track to partner with the schools to try and help fill in those gaps.
Thank you, Gina, and to fellow panelists, just how grateful I am, how grateful Communities and Schools is to walk alongside you as we all together face the crisis and the pandemic. This is a time where we have got to come together. The need, Gina, is incredible. Computer technology was something that we discussed previously as it is a benefit when we are able to place computers into the homes of our students. Overnight, it became a necessity, an absolute necessity for students to have the ability to immediately connect with the learning platforms that school districts were valiantly building. In addition, we have seen a great need for, as the economy and job loss has increased and unemployment has increased, families are struggling with rent, with utility, with food insecurity, accessing childcare. All of these are costs that families, many thousands, hundreds of thousands, were not able to meet before the crisis, and certainly are even more handicapped now to be able to address. So basic needs, absolutely. Technology is now included as a basic need. Hotspots and computers in homes is incredibly necessary. Other needs that we have seen increase over time just since March are attention to mental health and wellness of our students and of our staff. The social connectedness loss for our students, regardless of age, regardless of community, neighborhood background, has been of significant negative impact for our students. So attending to the social and emotional wellness of our students and staff is critical and must continue. I think that there are many ways that families in homes now can help, but it will take all of us together to really embrace that as something that we will all have to carry forward.
Now, you were telling me the other day that $1 million had been raised in regards to technology apparatus to hand out to students. $750,000 of it's already accounted for in terms of someone's either got it already or they're going to get those computers. I want to ask you and both superintendents, where are we in terms of just have we been able to get all the kids who need a computer in a hotspot, because they're going to need it next year? Lisa, let me start with you on that.
Well, and just point of clarification, we have Communities and Schools has raised more than $1 million, not just for technology, though. We're using that to meet basic needs, rent, utility, food. We have had the opportunity to distribute 5,000 computers in partnership with our friends at CompuDop across multiple school districts to families who have no computer in the home at all. And so that goes a distance. That is helpful to those 5,000 families who now have a computer in the home, but it does not go the distance that is needed across all of Greater Houston.
Dr. Lathan, if I could have you assess the extent to which the technological needs of your students have been met, and are they ready for the fall?
They have not. We need $50 million to start out to be able to equip every pre-K through 8th grade student with the technology that need. And that's just for the technology itself. And that's another reason as we plan for the fall, we will have to give priority to those students that do not have technology or access to technology in their homes, nor do they have access to an adult that can actually be with them during the school day to assist them. So it's beyond just a device. It's also having an adult there that can help them or assist them. So we're not there. We have a long way to go as it relates to getting technology in the hands of all of our students. Very pleased that all of our high school students actually have their own device and through our Power Up program, but we are not there for elementary and middle school students.
And Dr. Dupre?
Yes, first of all, I do want to acknowledge how powerful our collaborative community has been to help our students. And with Lisa on the call, I would add that we're actually expanding our Communities and Schools partnership next year. And I'm very proud that we're going to be, I think, quadrupling the number of schools that we're serving with CIS and Fort Bend ISD because we recognize the power of that relationship. But in regards to specifically to the technology piece, we have solved a great deal of the problem. We're relying heavily on bring your own device. where many of our students have devices that have worked well for them. But as you noted, we have handed out over 7,000 computers and hotspots in our community, but we still had about 3 or 4% of our students. And for us, that's 4,000 or 5,000 students that were not able to engage. And we don't know if that was specifically technology or not. But we also know that even students we gave computers and hotspots to, many of them lived in regions of our district that did not have connectivity. And so I would tell you, we've kind of joined on with a statewide collaboration led by the superintendent in Dallas ISD to make connectivity a social issue. This has been the signal that internet connectivity is no different than light, gas, and water. That everybody in the state is dependent upon technology. Our teachers, we have a reimbursement set up for our teachers who had minimum plans who just tax that to the max. And so we're setting up a reimbursement plan to help them offset some of the cost of really relying on their home-based internet service and cell services during the last few months. So yeah, this is an issue as a state. I know it's on the governor's radar. I know it's on the TEA commissioner's radar, and they're attending to that. But in the meantime, this fall, we're going to be heavily reliant on bring your own device, what students have. And we're setting up, we already have lending libraries in our schools, but we're just going to be pushing those out to students to take home permanently rather than leaving them at school.
We have, as I said, in excess of a couple hundred questions that have come in, and the biggest stack of questions are in regards to teachers. People are very concerned about their teachers. So let me mention a couple of them, and then we'll start attacking it. One of them comes in to me via Twitter. Please ask the superintendents about concerns for staff. What if staff members are a high risk or scared to return to work in general? Again, this is a question we get several times. What happens to them? Can they stay at home if they want? What are the plans if one student in the classroom contracts COVID? What options will the staff have in terms of teaching assignment, flexibility? So, Zeph, I'm gonna assume this is just the tip of the iceberg for the concerns that you've heard asked. Very much. Yeah. Okay. So let me put it to the superintendents to answer some of those, and like I said, I've got a big stack of questions regarding teachers, and so Dr. Dupre, you want to start with that one?
I would be happy to. Teachers are our most valuable resource. They work hard all day, every day in the classroom with the students, and I certainly understand their level of concern. As we think about our teachers, we've kind of thought about, because I'm hearing from some teachers who, just like the rest of our population, right, who are saying, let me get back to work, I'm ready to go. This is where I am, I'm ready and willing. But we also know we have teachers who are in the can't return to work category because they are at significant risk, and those who won't because of their fears, even though they may not have significant health risk. So it's easy solution to address the needs of the can't, because we've got to respect their needs and their wellness. And so if you pair that, now let me go extend that though, it's a little more challenging with the won't, especially because we will be having lots of safety protocols in place for all of them. So our job, my job, is to make sure we're providing assurances and tangible follow-through on those assurances to make sure the teachers know they are safe and protected in the school environment.
But now, it's hard to keep them safe in a school environment, like you said, with kids moving around and
You're exactly right. And so this ties in to the other part of the conversation about how students will learn. Because one thing we learned during the last 9 weeks of school was that some teachers are magic online. They were amazing. And other teachers really struggled. And so our goal would be, if you have a teacher who is great online and they're very fearful to come back in direct contact, we want to be able to support their wishes and let them work online. Even like I said earlier, it may be in a building in a private area where they're not exposed to anybody, but our goal is to match teachers with a responsibility that meets their needs. We're going to come down with some, though. We're going to have to make some hard decisions, and they may have to make some hard decisions. But our goal is truly to support and help each teacher every single step of the way. Because I think anything we do, and one of my board members did this in the school board meeting the other night. She said, well, if you take a classroom that typically has 22 kids and you have to social distance that room and have 11 or 15, you're just exponentially increasing the number of teachers you need in your school district. Mm-hmm. And I said, that's exactly right. So we can't afford to lose our good teachers or any teacher right now. We need to do everything we can to accommodate their needs, and put them in front of the students, empower them to do their best and be their best in a safe environment where they can feel comfortable working.
Zeph, I want to give you the next comment because I'm going to actually ask Dr. Lathan another question because we have so many teacher questions.
Well, I really appreciate hearing Dr. Dupre's position on this. I think one of the most important things that we need to do is start gathering that data now, identifying our teachers and our students that are most at risk, identifying our students that really want to come back and our teachers that really want to come back, and make sure that those matches are made first. Without having that real data, it makes it very hard to plan. And that's our concern, is we need to move quickly on getting the right data so that we have the right information to make the best decisions moving forward. I think it's really, really important that we realize we already have a shortage of our teachers, and a significant number of our teachers that we currently have are already at retirement eligible age, which also often then puts them in risk factors. We could be looking at another pandemic of not having available teachers if we're not figuring out the best ways to move forward. So I think it's very reassuring for our teachers and staff to hear what's being said, and they need to hear it more often as well. That's why we've been really encouraging all school districts to ensure that there's stakeholder voice on their reopening committees, so that you have those peers, the trusted peers and the teachers, actually being able to share their concerns with school districts, ensure that their concerns are addressed in the best manner, and then utilize them as the ambassadors to go out and talk to their peers and share what they've been doing and how they're participating to actually make it safe, so that they believe it whenever we say it.
Zeph, do you have any sense from your membership as to what percentage of the teachers are reluctant to come back into the classroom right now?
It's a pretty high number. We asked the question in several different ways. For example, in El Paso, because I'm also looking at the statewide, we had 55% of the teaching population out there answered that they did not feel confident in returning under the current circumstances right now. That is telling us that we've got to do a much better job of getting the right information out to people and ensuring that they actually have or feel like they have a direct say in what's happening and in their environment and returning. We've heard as well, several of them would be much more comfortable coming back to their classrooms and be able to teach as well too, but also some would be much more comfortable staying at home. Is that a decision that's etched in stone, or is it one that can really be worked with on a case-by-case circumstance? And we hope that those case-by-cases will be where we're at most of the time.
Dr. Lathan, can you respond to what he just said about how you'll evaluate?
And, we're not going to have a choice. I think we're going to have to offer multiple options for our teachers. Like I said, some in the classroom with no students and teaching virtually, some being able to be at home. For us, it's having a process in place that's fair to everyone. So I don't get to say Zeph can stay at home, but Charles can report. We want to make sure. And so that's what we're working on now, is what will that process look like? But we are also asking our principals to identify, and I would strongly make this comment because Zeph is going to listen to this part, identify those rock star virtual teachers. Who were those rock stars? Not as for evaluation purposes, but we need to generate a list by school and by region in Houston of who are those people, because they could actually teach across multiple schools, be at home or be in a classroom by themselves, but they're able to reach students. So that's what we're working on now. We've asked principals to gather that information so we can identify those people and maybe offer them an opportunity in addition to people who have medical situations or family members. But that's what we're talking about right now, how to make that happen. It's our goal for principals to have all of that information in by July the 9th. I know it might sound, that's a long time, but it is not a long time when you complement that with our different committees that are working. But by school, we will know who those staff members are, not by name, but percentages of what those concerns are and what we need to do, how we need to act and respond.
And when do you think you'll be making a decision about if you're going to a hybrid model or not, and how that hybrid will look? When are you? I mean, I guess you kind of said you probably have to do a hybrid. When do you expect to be able to make that announcement to parents?
When we receive based on receiving information on Tuesday, it's our goal to then take that information, as the CFO is going to have to make sure he's analyzing it from a financial standpoint. We'll have our two committees, the Reopening Task Force Committee and Instructional Continuity, finalizing their reports based on the criteria. And by the second week of July, because I'm saying the first, but first is 4th of July week, but after that 4th of July week, we will have to have some definite decisions, because we have to finalize transportation, which is a major one. We transport about 60,000 students. Right. We transport more students daily than some of our surrounding districts as far as the size. And so that's another factor. And the transportation group they've put together some various scenarios also.
Gina, can I interject? We touched on this at the beginning of the conversation, but I think everyone can start to see this is where the rubber meets the road, right? Because the governor is committed to getting the state back open. He's called for schools to be open, but we cannot open if students don't come and if teachers will not come.
Right.
And so this is what makes it exceptionally challenging. I mean, I know in our community, I've only seen some very high level survey data, but our teachers are concerned, like Zeph said. But our parents are also concerned. We have a significant number who are concerned. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but I know it's enough to concern me, because the other piece of this that's taking place is the federal acts, the federal relief acts allow for teachers and employees to go home and stay home on leave at a significant portion of their pay if they have childcare issues and things like that. So some of these teachers have an out to stay home and say, I'm not coming, and we will still have to pay them a portion of their paycheck. So this is a very complex situation of all the moving pieces of teachers and the parents and the decisions that they will make. Now I'm going to go back. You asked Grenita this. The way this has to fall is we've got our preliminary plans. We're going to get information from the commissioner next week. Then we can finalize our plans and share those publicly. Then we're going to survey our parents and ask them, you commit now to, will your child come to the building, or are they going to be online now that you know what we are doing? And then we will ask the same question of the teachers to commit their level of comfort coming into the building or not, or online or face-to-face. And then we've got to put all that together during the month of July.
A lot. I wanted to go back to you, Ms. Swallen, to give you a chance as a parent to ask a question, because you've heard a lot now, and I know you're trying to process what you're going to do for your family.
So I just want to say a couple of things to Dr. Lathan. And one is, I really appreciate that you took the information that we gave you from the 11th month schedule and you heard our voices. Two, I have a child at risk for, learning difficulties, and we are in summer school and we can afford a computer, but learning from a computer, that was provided by our household and not having logins stored for two different children was very challenging. And so I had expressed that to my school, and they provided me this iPad. And my iPad came programmed with passwords and links to websites that I'm using. And it is life-changing for us for our 2 hours of the day that we are in summer school. And I wish it could have been available, throughout this whole, March through May. But even affluent families, they need technology, or we need a technology person. I mean, it's not fair to ask me to get on my personal computer with two kids and log in, and now Google doesn't remember my website or my user ID and password. It's super annoying. And so I just want to really express how important technology is to everyone. in the school district.
Ms. Morales, I wanted to give you a chance also to ask a question or weigh in at this point.
So my question is, I know I've talked to a lot of parents and they're asking, so do I have to choose between my child's health or my child's education? Because if we are doing learning from home, what is the grading going to look like? What if they don't have, multiple computers? They don't have internet access. What about the special needs kids who have to have close contact with their teachers because they need help with various things? How is that going to look like? Like that, those are my concerns.
You asked 3 very good questions. Let's take the last question first. Dr. Dupre,
okay. Go
ahead, Grenita. Go ahead.
You go ahead.
Ladies first.
Okay. Ladies first.
So the one about grading and attendance, that's the information we're also waiting to receive from TEA so that we can we have our scenarios of what we are saying are going to be the expectations around grading, the expectations around students logging in so many hours per day by certain grade levels, but we still need that information from TEA. As it relates to special needs.
And that's Tuesday. I just want to remind people watching, that comes on Tuesday. You're expecting some recommendations, right?
That's what TEA said to us.
Yes, and that's what they said to you, right?
Right. And so as it relates to special needs students, you're right. Those students that need that interaction with teachers, there are some other options that we've talked about. We have not, once again, we're still looking at. There might be some teachers or staff members that might go out to some homes and provide services, but we still have to make sure that they're going to be safe from a standpoint of not getting any, having any problems with getting ill or getting sick. And so those are some things that we're looking at, especially for our most challenged, involved, or health related students that are special needs or identified as special education.
Exactly. And we're the same, I would say the same thing. We have actually in Fort Bend, we have been doing home services for many of our special needs students for some time now for that very reason, because we knew they needed us to do that for them. But I will say that I think as we've talked about earlier, our special needs students are high on the list of getting them back in the school building. And in many ways, I'm going to be honest, they are one of the easiest populations to protect. Because often those rooms already have very few students in them. It's just a matter of making sure the teachers have all the equipment and gear they need to protect themselves. Because so often many of the students might, if you think about some children who are special needs, they may pull off the masks. They may do things that we don't want them to do. So we have to make sure the teachers are well protected in that environment. But I think we're well poised to bring those children back into the building on a consistent, regular basis to make sure we're meeting their needs in a safe way.
Are you thinking pass-fail next year, or are you thinking grades?
Absolutely not pass-fail. That is, we cannot do that again. As we've done our planning, we've said when we start school, we have to grade, we have to have a rigorous, robust instructional program, and the mantra will not be do your best. Mm-hmm. It will be we are here to deliver on our district's core belief and commitment of every child fulfilling their full potential, even under these unique circumstances. So it will look different in many cases, but we will have a rigorous and robust instructional program, even if they're at home. This is we're looking at a few new technologies to introduce, because we know that even if a child is at home, they need direct face-to-face instruction, even if it's online. Mm-hmm. It can't be, here's a packet, or here is some stuff in Schoology. Exactly. We're going to have to be engaging with our students more directly to teach and assess their progress. So even our at-home students, if they're home full-time, they will have direct instruction, and it's going to be 3 to 4 hours a day. So that's going to be a big step forward, and we will be grading.
Here's a question that came to us from Lisa. If we do a hybrid approach, are classroom teachers expected to teach online as well as in the classroom? She writes in parentheses, that is double the workload and not okay. So I'm wondering, is there going to be a camera live streaming the class in the back, or will it be?
I think that's real. That is some of the things we're looking at. Is a teacher can teach a live lesson and the students at home can watch while the students in the classroom are present in the classroom. But there's also, I'll keep in mind, opportunities that if we have a schedule where students come to school 2 days a week and they learn from home 3 days a week, they could be served by the teacher who's teaching them face-to-face one day, but then online the next day. So it doesn't have to be double the workload. It all comes to how we schedule the teacher. Now, if we schedule a double workload, that can be a big problem. I totally get that. We are not interested in increasing the workload of the teacher. It's going to be challenging enough for those who are teaching online or doing the hybrid model. We're going to schedule it out in a way to make their life manageable. That's going to be high on our priority list.
Mr. Capo, what do you think of that?
Thank you, Ms. Gaston. Dr. Dupre, that's a really good point. It really is about scheduling. It's about putting those things together. Going even further, talking about those teachers that really did a good job of adapting to the online model. How do you pair them with others so that their colleagues can actually, one, learn from them on their skills for online teaching, but also be a resource for that larger group that they may have online to provide more of that direct connection that Ms. Swallen was talking about may be needed for some of our kids. You know, having this may be one of those cases where we do have to do more pairing of teachers together to meet the necessary needs of kids based on their health circumstances, based on their comfort and availability with the technological work. And some of them, quite frankly, are much better at doing the one-on-one learning and meeting the needs of individual small groups as well, too. That is a definitive skill that is one that we probably need to highlight and praise right now at this time, because we know that it's needed, particularly for our kids that have missed it for so long.
I would agree with you. We've actually discussed the concept of team teaching because, you know, our teachers already plan together. And so, like you said, when you put them on that team with someone who's really good with one-on-one, small group, individual interventions, and then somebody who can do the large group, you could have a teacher virtually teaching 44 to 66 children while the other teachers they're with are doing some one-on-one and face-to-face. So there's many ways we can leverage the teacher's abilities. And like you said, they're all growing together when we do that as they serve the children.
I have a whole bunch of questions in regard to health that came in, so I'm going to read a couple of them. What happens to the students when the teachers or staff who have become exposed or develop symptoms and test positive come to work? At that point, who would be required to quarantine? And there's many questions that go kind of along that line. I would like to know if the children return to school. This one's from Tawana. If the children return to school, will the schools be closed for 2 weeks if one person tests positive for COVID? A lot of people kind of have that question of how many cases does it take to shut down a school? How many cases does it take to shut down a classroom? And have you gotten to a point where you know the answers to that? I'll start with you, Dr. Lathan.
Not so much how many cases it takes to shut down a school. The first step for us, of course, is contacting our Director of Health and Medical Services. And there's a protocol, a series of questions, and also she's in contact with the city and county health department, and then they provide some guidance to us. So it could be a particular classroom that's closed or a portion of the building. Then everything is clean and sanitized. And so it could be a quarantine for just that entire class, or it could be the entire building or portions of that. But as we receive that information, that's when a decision is made, which classrooms or which schools are then closed. And I'll tell you, even when we were wrestling with this in March, and I believe Fort Bend was on spring break and we were still in session, our issue is, because like I said, we're transporting students across this entire city, and we have students in magnet schools and families in different places. That's why when we made the decision to go ahead and close immediately, because of the fact it's kind of a ripple effect for us across our district. But it will all depend on what happens, and if it's the teacher that's testing positive or the student, and whom the number of people that they've come in contact with.
Ms. Gaston,
yes.
If I might jump in on this one, particularly because we've done a lot of talking about our teachers, but this question really is important for the real important job our support staff play in our schools. Right. It's going to be all that more important that we probably have additional people that are on our cleaning crews that are able to clean and wipe down PE equipment in between classes, that are there available for teachers that may have students that are in person to make sure that we are, for the exact reason that you're talking about, immediately eliminating that threat. And so many of our support staff, from our cleaning crews to the people that are feeding our kids and families, have really been putting themselves at risk, coming up with their own places as well too. And I think this is one of the things that got forgotten. Dr. Lathan mentioned earlier just the finances that are needed to meet the needs of our kids that don't have hotspots and computers. We have a tremendous need to be able to make sure that we have the proper staff that are trained and have the equipment to keep themselves safe and the school safe and the teachers and the kids. That's why it's really frustrating to hear that the dollars appropriated by Congress for the CARES Act are being held at the state level, that they're not getting down to the districts where they need to be, that they're not able to depend on those additional dollars to pay for additional expenses, unbudgeted expenses that we're having to deal with right now. It's our kids and our teachers and staff that are paying that bill to solve a problem for the state. So we are going to need assistance. We can't do it on our own. Districts can't do it on their own. We are going to have to think much harder and be much more disciplined about our approach moving forward, particularly about how we think about funding schools and the staff that are in them, far beyond just the teachers.
Yeah, and if you go to things like requiring masks, does the school district have to provide those masks? Because obviously everyone's not going to be able to buy masks and the extra hand sanitizers and all of that, let alone if we go to a situation where a decision's made that you need fewer kids in the classroom and thus you need more teachers. That's a whole nother ball of wax. Dr. Dupre, your thoughts on what Mr. Capo just said?
Well, I would agree with him, and we do think in terms of teachers, but it's going to take everybody, and we know our budget is going to be strained, because even something as simple as if we do any kind of health screening on a regular basis, most of our campuses have one nurse. That's not feasible for one nurse to serve that many children. That's a whole nother responsibility, and we do not want to ask teachers to be taking children's temperatures to health screen them. So it's going, that simple thing, in addition to the custodial staff, as he mentioned, there's a great deal of complexity around this. And again, I always think in terms of peeling back the layers of the onions, right? So each step of the way, there's another layer you're peeling back and realizing, okay, that's another problem we need to solve, something we need to think about as we're putting all of this puzzle together.
Yes, Cheryl wrote this. It's the question over enforcement. Who is going to be the one who makes sure? What if you have a principal at a school who wants you to bring your child to school ill? The reasoning behind the practice is to have the student there until the 9:30 attendance. That's what Cheryl's concerned about. How will you ensure the safety of the children, and who's going to make sure your principals are following proper guidelines as well as their staffs?
We'll have to have a lot of accountability for that.
Yes.
The good news is, though, I'm going to tell you, I do know, I'm hearing enough from TEA to know they're thinking about that, right? They want to make sure that they're funding us on attendance, but they want to be able to create the structure that will allow parents to be honest about their children's health. And so, I mean, the commissioner has sent strong signals, even in his message today, that if children are learning from home, we'll still be funded for those children.
Okay.
So I think they are trying to set up those systems that will enable parents to make the best decision for their child's health and the health of the community without putting the district at risk.
A couple people also asking about extracurricular activities. We're running out of time, and I can't believe it because we still have so many more things to talk about. But Laura Medina asked, will there be organized sports this coming school year? And Leah Malvo says, how would sports for the school year work out, seeing as how so right now there are many athletes doing conditioning camp? Would sports season still be going on? I know at my kids' high school, our conditioning camp was shut down in its first week because of COVID. Dr. Lathan, I'll start with you on that.
So we will follow the guidelines from UIL and also from TEA as it relates to organized sports for the fall. Yes, we've started conditioning, and based on the guidelines that we've received, we have not had any issues over the past 2 weeks, but we will continue to look at that on a weekly basis, and then, like I said, make those formal decisions once we receive additional information as it relates to fall sports from UIL.
Okay. I wanted to ask you, Ms. Descant, what are your thoughts for community and schools? What are your thoughts about the challenges you're going to be up against in this next school year?
Well, we share the same challenges considering the health and wellness of our staff, but I want to speak to the partnership that we have with school districts like Houston ISD, Fort Bend, as well as Ms. Morales' school district, Spring Branch ISD. We've talked a lot today about the logistics, the physical health logistics, the transportation logistics, the food service logistics. The school districts that are represented here today are also thinking about the mental health well-being, regardless of whether a student is sitting at home or sitting on school campus. For them to be at their best, to have had a good meal before they leave home, to have their mental health and emotional well-being attended to is something that these school districts are thinking about in partnership with communities and schools. Is very much what we have our mind on, ensuring that we continue to have funds to be able to provide emergency assistance to families who are still facing job loss, and to students who this is a stressful experience. We are worried about increases in depression and anxiety. We are worried about rising numbers in suicide. We are worried about rising numbers of substance use. This is where our focus is, because we know we can rely on our educational leaders to attend to the educational setting. So we are here really focused on financial needs and mental wellness for our students.
Ms. Morales, I want to go back to you as a mom. Give us a little, before we have to wrap this up, a little bit of insight into what it was like for you at the end of last year, having to manage the education of your 3 children.
It was hard. The struggle of my daughter, Aubrey, she didn't have a computer. So I want to say thank you to CIS for helping me and providing a computer for her, because she was doing packets online. I mean, it was paper packets, and it was so hard to try to just get her to focus on that, because she missed her classmates, she missed her teacher, and she didn't understand what we were going through. And it was hard for me to explain to her what we're going through, and I myself is like, well, what are we going through? This is something that no one ever thought was gonna turn out to be with COVID. We didn't think it was gonna stick around for so long, and then with the governor, opening up everything right away, it's concerning. So it was very difficult it was very challenging as well. But I have to say thank you to CIS for a lot of help, and even with what going in, I know in the future they always help with school supplies. They help with weekly meals for families in need, and I just think that I can be more grateful for them.
What are you going to tell the parents that go to your school if they ask you, what do we do right now to prepare? Is there something you're thinking that you learned from last spring that you're thinking, here's what I'm going to do as a parent to try and help manage the situation for my family?
I'm just going to go back to what we talked about today and try to, give them some assurance that hoping that everything's going to be okay. It's just difficult, just trying to figure out whether you decide what for your child's safety or their child's education. So it's still like a hard topic to still talk about.
Yeah.
Can I speak to that real quick, Ms. Morales? I just want you to understand, I know you're superintendent. We're all on the same team as school leaders, and we don't want you to have to make that choice. We want you to be able to make the choice that is best for your child and your family, and we will be there to provide the education for your children, whatever choice you make.
Yeah, I know. I'm an SBISD, and I too had to fill out one of those parent surveys, and that is the question. It's kind of like, well, Are you going to bring your kid back? And if you have to pick between safety and them getting behind in school. I know, Dr. Lathan, you guys had a challenge and weren't able to keep contact with thousands of students last spring. How is that going in terms of trying to catch back up with them?
So we're still reaching out, trying to reach the last little group of students, and we will continue to do that all the way up to the first day of school. And then even when students, if parents choose to move to a 100% virtual format or a hybrid, we're going to still follow those students. It's important that we know where all of our students are and that we're able to measure their progress. And so we're just going to keep trying. And like I said, with our partners of communities and schools, our wraparound specialists, they're still out reaching out, knocking on doors, calling parents, calling extended family members, and we're just going to keep trying.
What piece of advice would you offer us parents right now as we try to get our mind around what we're going to face in the fall?
And I just like what Dr. Dupre said earlier, every superintendent in this state and across the country, we all want to do what's best, and we are going to do what's best for the children that we serve. For parents to just to be patient, to understand that we don't want to rush and make a decision that might compromise their child's safety, but that we're going to ensure that we have plans in place, either virtually or face-to-face, to meet their child's need. And just be patient with us as we work through this. Like I said, March to May, I know was phase 2. Mm-hmm. But like I told my principals, the playbook is totally different now. It's a totally different playbook because we've had an opportunity to develop it. Totally different set of expectations, but know that everyone, we care about our students and we definitely care about our staff.
Well,
I would echo that. I would echo that, Gina. Patience is the key for parents right now.
Yeah.
But also, I've challenged our parents in Fort Bend to stay engaged. It's easy to think it's summer, and therefore I don't have to check email as often. I don't have to pay attention to the school stuff. But every day or every week, we're sending things to parents to keep them informed, and they're going to have to make some hard decisions. So I asked them to stay engaged, to be patient, to listen carefully to what we're saying, and look at our website, watch our videos, and don't go off on social media with negativity and fear. We're here to serve you. We're here to make it positive, but work with us. And we have multiple ways to ask questions if you have them. And we're always going to get you responses to the best of our ability with what's available at the time. So just work with us, and we will get to the first day of school together.
I want to thank all of you for being with us this evening and participating in this conversation. I think a lot of parents are going to feel a lot better. They'll feel 100% better when they have a calendar all laid out and all the details worked out. But we understand that's a process, and trying to figure out where each teacher belongs, where they can be most successful. And when each family decides for themselves what is the best format for their children to learn in. So again, thank you for being with us, and we thank those of you at home who are watching us, and we wish